and my spirit makes diligent search. I'm trying to figure it out, he's saying. Um, will the Lord cast off forever? Now, here's a series of questions we'll come back to a little later on in this lesson. Take say, will the Lord cast off forever? And will he be favorable no more? Has his mercy ceased forever? Has his promise failed forevermore? Has God forgotten to be gracious? I think about that. And then the last question, I think he says, and I said, this is my anguish. It's about 6 questions. He said, this is my anguish. But I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High God. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember your wonders of old. I will also meditate on all your work. And he just go on to say how he's acknowledging God even after he questioned God. I remember Brother Isaac, I think it was in the Wednesday night class, there was a couple of questions in his text. I think it was from Psalm about the individual questioning God. And we didn't get a chance to dwell on that too much, but I think it was a question at the time of a difficult situation. Even Job, uh, he himself had some concern, but he didn't give up. It says, surely, verse 11, I will remember your wonders of old. Verse 12, I will also meditate on all your works and talk of your deeds. Your way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? That's that last question he asked. And it's important that we think about this question that the writer is asking here. He said, you are the God who does wonders. You have declared your strength among the people. You have, with your arm, redeemed your people, the sons of Jacob and Joseph, Selah. I think the word Selah is mentioned here 3 times in this lesson. Now that's looking at the latter reading of the lesson. It says, the water saw you, O God. And I like this about the writer because it shows that he thinks about the power of God and how he talking about some of the very things that are awesome power on this earth. He says, the water saw you, God. And he said, the water saw you. They were afraid. How can the water be afraid? But you have to get into the lesson. We'll get into that in a little bit more. It said, the depths also trembled. The clouds poured out water. I'm talking about the rain. And it said, the skies sent out a sound. Your arrows also flashed about. Let me pause it just for a minute. I thought about one of our kids when they were growing up, Eric in particular, uh, had a little friend. She lived up on the hill from us. And at that time, I said, what was big then? Nintendo games? I think it was something like that. Anyway, they would always she would come down the house and they would always want to play these Nintendo games. But one of the things that she used to watch on Nintendo game is, was it The Little Mermaid? Yeah. And The Little Mermaid dad was the sea god, so to speak. He'd always had a bunch of bolt of lightnings in his hand. He would throw them at me. And I thought about that. I said, when it says, your arrows also flashed about, talking about the lightning. It said, the voice of your thunder was in the whirlwind. The lightning lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your ways was in the sea, your path in the great waters, and your footsteps were not known. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. That's our reading text there. Before we get into the introduction, anybody get a chance to kind of look over the lesson a little bit? Anything stood out to you in particular? Anything? I'd like to give you that opportunity to jump in right quick. Introduction now, man. I'm not gonna throw Brenda on the bus. She did her best on getting the font out there, but it's a little small for me. You did good, baby. Okay. The psalms have traditionally been divided into 5 parts. Perhaps, I don't necessarily agree with that, in the imitation of the 5 books of Moses. The first division of Psalms includes Psalm chapter 1 to Psalm chapter 41. The second Psalm, division of Psalm, is Psalm chapter 42 through chapter 72. The third Psalm, chapter 73, the third division of Psalm, chapter 73 to chapter 89. And the fourth division of Psalm is chapter 90 to chapter 105. And the fifth, of course, is Psalm chapter 107 to chapter 150. And this is some of the stuff I shared with out of the book because I think it's important. And most of them probably knew this about the Psalm, but it's hard to say that any of the division has distinctive features that set it apart from the other division. The Greek translation of the Old Testament, called the Septuagint, often abbreviated with the Roman number from for 70, LLX, has an extra psalm, it says, number Psalm 150. And I'm going to call on one of our Old Testament scholars here. What about that, Brother Stanley? You have no clue on it. Okay. And I looked all everywhere for something about that, but it's just not there. But like I said, I think sometimes the writer like to fill stuff fulfilling. But he says, and the Psalm are numbered in the LLX a little differently than they are in the Hebrew and the most English translation. The LXX was done around 200 BC. And they thought this was a good reading because this has some credence to it. Say, apparently, because some of the Jews did not read Hebrew by then. I thought that was really unique. I thought they read Hebrews their entire life. But by then, they, of course, they probably didn't have the opportunity. But it says, the 151st Psalm in Roman number LLX hardly says anything. By the way, that Roman number is what? Say again? All right, I'm gonna be all on the same page. Yeah. Hardly says anything originally. It is a statement. Uh, say that word from somebody. Parochial. I said it a million times. Read this lesson. Still, it is a parochial statement about David being a shepherd. In the sentence itself, Psalm 150 is said to be outside the number of the 150 universally accepted Psalms. So much for that. It is required only a glance to notice that Psalm 77 is the first psalm we have studied in more detail that falls into the third division of the Psalms. The first thing noticeable about this is that David did not write it. Like Psalm 59, it addresses itself to chief musician, apparently some man, a person who arranged the psalm for worship in the temple and perhaps elsewhere. While Psalm 59 was to be sung according to an ancient psalm called Do Not Destroy, Psalm 77 was to be sung according to the tune of Jet 2. And that means it was to be sang really loud, with enthusiasm. Maybe I messed that word up. Enthusiasm. It was to be sung with loud and to be really praising and glorifying God. That's what it's to be sung with. And so we will look past that, but there's a couple of things I really want to look at this before we get done. Instead of being a psalm to or by David, Psalm 7 is to Asaph, who brings a unique perspective as one of the chief musicians in the temple. So I want to get from that First Chronicles 16:5. The name and technical notation such as Selah, Psalms 77, 3, 9, and 15 may have been helpful to ancient singers. And I always thought about that. I see the word Selah at some of the end of the chapters of the scriptures in the Bible of the Psalm. And it might be because you think about what Psalm is, it's a book of what? Psalms. That's right. And that might have been helpful to them. Still, they are a little help to us when we're trying to interpret it. And of course, yes, sir.
When I was studying that word, it indicated that there's a special emphasis need to be placed on what is being said.
Yeah. Now, I did kind of run over that, but you're right. That's what it did. That's That's what most times mean, what that word sailor, right? Yeah, there's present emphasis on what is being said. Thank you, Jonathan, I can't remember everything. Earl, you had a comment?
He's closing a thought and start a new thought.
Say again?
Tell it, he's closing a thought and finna start a new thought.
Okay, okay, okay. All right, so, First Chronicles 16. First Chronicles 16, someone who had that, 16:5. I want to look at that a little bit in detail.
Asaph, the
Mhm.
chief, and next to him Zechariah,
Mhm.
then Janelle,
Mhm.
Zimar,
Yeah,
Zimar,
it's a title.
Nadel, Mathiah,
Mhm.
Eli,
Mhm.
I should have done this.
Eliab, Benaiah, yeah. Obadiah.
Nadel with string instruments and harp,
Mhm.
but Asaph made music with cymbals.
Mhm. All right.
Benaiah and
You go ahead. Get rid of.
Josiah, the priest regularly blew the trumpet before the ark of the covenant of God.
Of God. Okay. What's taking place here during this time? What's going on? What had happened that David did for the
Ark was placed in the temple.
in the temple? Yeah, they're celebrating. Exactly. Okay. Anyone else? I'm gonna skip some of the introduction because I want to get down into some of the parts of the lesson that this one I want to be right here, right quick. Psalm 77, 1-9 is talks about how I suffer. When we think about someone suffering, and let me, before I get too far, I want to bring something out of this. First of all, who was Asaph? But what tribe was he from? The Levite tribe, that's right. He was a songwriter, he was a composer, and particularly in composing worship and stuff, but he was more or less, he was a Levite. And if you think about who was in charge of handling the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, the Levite. So Asaph had a pretty important part there, and we did a little bit of research on Asaph. He had some challenges, man. He had some challenges. He really did. One of the words I also like, man, I hate skipping, but I got to. One of the things in the introduction to Psalm 77, it is a diary or lament, which means is a musical or lyrical composition that expresses deep sorrow, I think someone mentioned that, such as the grief of losing a loved one. But that's what it means. It means to give, sometimes when we lose loved ones, we don't let go a lot among others. But we're in our private moment. We let everything out. I know we all have done that. And then so that word diary, and it talks about lamentation. That's part of the introduction. I didn't get a chance because I just want to move past it. Brother Smith was over there.
Yeah, the dirge was like a funeral song.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
That's what you got, the book of lamentation,
Mm-hmm.
book of sorrow.
Book of sorrow, that's right. Yeah.
That, a lot of Jews identified
Yeah.
with that dirge song because they went through a lot of suffering.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
they, if you look at the psalm, it kind of addresses every issue that a human being can go through.
Yeah.
And I think Psalms 107 is similar to that.
Yeah.
Because being driven to wit's end.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of whatever you got to go through, God looks at your response. In Psalm 77, he responded, even though he went through the challenges. He responded with remembering.
Well, remember that, and that's the key, because at some point in time in that verse, you know what that is? So at some point in time in that, what he remembered, before he did that, he questioned God. Questioned God about, will he remember me? Will he think about it? Will he do this? Will he do that? And I say, sometimes, I know we've all had some challenges in our life about, sometimes, why am I going through this? Why me? But yeah, why not others? You know, because you again, I had my focus scripture to follow me all the way through the lesson. It says, all that live godly shall suffer persecution. Now, I think that's another point in that suffering persecution. And you have to go to Timothy to read the whole chapter. One thing that I thought about is that you can suffer persecution being a Christian, being busy in somebody else's business. And you stay out of other people's business and you won't suffer as much. But being a Christian and trying to stay focused, we don't feel something to some degree. Okay, that being said, let's look at how I suffer. Psalm 77, 1 through 9. The psalmist suffered whether he caused by others or self-generated is a stark reality. His fear, even if they were self-inflicted, were no less real. And that's the point, they're real. He articulated his trouble and God heard. However, putting one's trouble into words alone can have a healing effect. It can. You know why? Because sometimes we going through something real deep in life, we write it down. We pen it, make notes of it, and we go back and look at it and man, how did I get through that? How in the world did I get through? But God. But it is not likely to cheer up the sufferer. He confessed that he had stretched out his hand but found no relief. My soul refused to be confident, he wrote, Psalm 7:72. Desperate, he turned to God and found no relief. He complained, but his spirit was overwhelmed. It's been, I don't know, maybe it's me. I'm not saying that. But that's sometimes I've had challenges in life. Man, it's tough to get a prayer, just to even pray, to focus, because you're overwhelmed with what you're going through. But at the end of the day, we still know to call upon the Lord. He said he was perplexed. Should he admire the psalmist's courage or his simple honesty most? Suffering, loneliness, and uncertainty were part of the psalmist's nightmare. Nighttime, not nightmare, but nighttime. My bad on that. Part of his nighttime. Yet God held his, on the trigger here. See if I can get back there. Let me get back there. Okay. See where I was. Okay. Let me get here. Okay, all over again. Okay. Okay. That's what I'm at right there. Okay. Suffering, loneliness, and uncertainty were part of the psalmist's nighttime. Yet God held his eyelids open. He could not lay his anxiety aside. He said, I am so troubled, he wrote, that I cannot speak. Verse 4. What about that, class? Anybody ever been down that road? Been so troubled you can't speak? I know all of us in here has had some challenges, in life. Let's look at this next part of this. Yeah, I saw him.
Just a question. I want to get. Just you said, should we admire his honesty?
Huh?
Just a question. Should we admire his honesty? I want to address it because oftentimes we don't want to appear vulnerable. But he said, I struggle.
You said I struggle, right?
We don't want to admit that we struggle, but we can't get healing. Like you said earlier, sometimes we need to put it in words and talk about it and get healing. But we denied it. We unhonored. We deny it. We can't get healing.
Yeah.
I like the point. That's a good question you asked about vulnerability.
Yeah. And that's probably the best thing to do, because how can we lie to God? We have to be honest with ourselves, and because it's sometimes, you think about what you're going through, and man, you had that alone. You had this game, and I use the term game maybe for lack of better word, but you had it alone at this point in time, and in this case, yet he held his eyelid open. He could not lay any anxiety aside. He said, I am so troubled, he wrote, that I cannot speak. you know, when you can't speak and can't say anything, it's really tough. It's really tough when you what is on your mind is so heavy that you can't utter words, even to yourself, to the point where you're having difficulties deciding what to do next. That's your hand? Yes. Oh, yeah, go.
I was thinking, when I asked that sometimes, um, I'm trying to protect somebody else,
Mhm.
you know, maybe in the family or something, so I try to keep it inside
Yeah,
and not reveal it.
but it's troubling
That
you.
I'm not strong.
Yeah, yeah. But it's still troubling you, though. Yeah, okay, I get it. About Smith?
Yeah, I think Paul mentioned in 2 Corinthians that he was so troubled that he actually desired death, but he realized that God taught him how not to rely upon himself,
Yeah.
but to rely upon God.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like one preacher said, at our extreme is God's opportunity. So you have to learn when you push the limit,
Mhm.
like he did, cry out to God.
Cry out to God,
God,
yeah,
you know, will show himself as a deliverer
Yeah.
and all powerful.
Yeah.
You know, you have to step aside, but you have to learn how to, we talk about faith,
Yeah.
you have to learn how to rely upon him and,
Yeah.
do it except he'll take it.
Exactly. And you know, I think about that, Brother Smith. When if I ever walk through two hills, the ground is up on both sides. I mean, this and that. I think about when it's talking about I walk through the valley, the shadow of death. I'm overwhelmed with what's around me, my suffering. And like Brother Smith said, you know, you have to, at some point in time, got no control of them. You got to give it to God. Is at that point. Sister Laverne, you want to move on?
But just to relate to that, what you said, I came back to when I thought my second child was dead.
Yeah.
And people were coming into the ER wherever I was, because I didn't know at the time, and they were trying to comfort me.
Yeah.
But none of their words
Yeah.
comforted me. So the only thing in my brain,
Yeah.
what I was doing was just praying to God
Yeah.
to help me get through it.
Yeah.
Because individuals' words weren't helping at all.
They were, that's like this is going over your head.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, because you wouldn't, that's knowing your suffering is deep, and then at that point, the only thing to do is do like Asaph did. He said he decided to hand matters over to God, but he still worried. I think somebody said something about that one time. You know, when you give it to God, what you got to do, you got to give it to Him. Yeah, give it all to Him. Don't give it some of it and say, "Hey, God, yeah, I'll deal with the rest. You handle it." No, you got to give the whole thing to Him. This is what Asaph did say. But he still worried. He said, "I called to remembrance." He said, "My song in the night." Psalm 77:6. Also, Psalm 42:8. Go ahead, the legion, read it. Man. It said, "In the past, God turned His mind to a happier time." See, that's what God can do with our mind. You know, and then also you think about it, God is powerful God. You know, because just like He did Saul, He did Saul. What kind of spirit did when God had took the throne from Saul? What kind of spirit did He give Saul? He gave him a spirit. I think the Bible says sometimes, you know, God gives us a reprobate mind. You know, if you ain't right and you ain't right with God, and you try to give it to God, He give you a mind to go do something you ain't got no business. I don't think God would do that to you on purpose, but you have to have that relationship with God. That when we give it to God, it's going to be addressed. In the past, God turned His mind to happier time. He would ask God to do the same thing again. But something new, He needed to turn his heart from this doleful thinking. And that is so true. He goes on to say, "I will remember." I will remember. But before he remembered, he had some questions that he had posed to God from chapter 6, from chapter 77, verse 6 to 8. He said, those 6 questions was verse 7 through 8. Will the Lord cast off forever, and will He be faithful no more? Has His mercy ceased forever? has this promise forevermore? And those questions were pretty heavy on him, but yet he turned the matter over to God. Looking at I will remember. Now at this point, more fruitful, the psalmist turned himself to God's mighty act of the past. God revealed himself to his people through his deeds and his word. The psalmist's sentiment in these verses should be closely constructed with the verses immediately before them. That's some points in the lesson book I want to share, but I just don't have time. But if you go to the book under this, I will remember, and just kind of read that whole thing, because it says in there there's a lesson for us to remember God in difficult times. Brother David, you want to move on? Go ahead.
Well, and talking about remembering when you have your trouble,
Yeah.
you can remember that God parted the Red Sea.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what he was saying. Excuse me. That's what he was saying at the end of the lesson about how the water was afraid of God and all this stuff, and how God did all this for the children, and all that was brought to his mind how God, in his awesome power, were able to change these the outcome of the children of Israel while they were down in Egypt themselves. That very thought caused him untold anguish. In the past, God, people turned away from the Lord, but he had always been gracious and forgiving. They compromised with idolatry in Egypt, but God took them out. He saved them from the army of Pharaoh and led them through the sea for good reason. Jonah had said, for I know that. Now that's the part that I like in this lesson, how Jonah, even before he went to Nineveh, how did he describe God? Anybody remember? Yeah, he said that God is a compassionate God, human, kind, gracious, long-suffering. But he didn't want to go preach to those people because he I guess him being a Jew didn't want nobody else to be saved but himself. Now, we can't be that way. But looking further, since we're running so short on time, I'm going to run over to the application here for a minute, because that's something in the application I really want to share. But nature's honor God. I'm going to see if I can get through that. The God who removed the anxiety of the psalmist was a God who had acted to fasting for himself and his people. But he was more. He rules over the heavens, the earth, and the sea of his creation. It is always the same in the psalmist and the prophet. He is the God who involves himself in the lives of humankind. That's what I'm talking about. God's that kind of person. He chose Israel, but he also the God who reigns over his world. Israel might be the God chosen people, but at the end of the day, in Joel 2:2, God they established his come to the top of the mountain, and all nations shall flow into it. When you obey God, and Jesus said in John 12:48, he that rejected me, receive not my word, the same judgment as me. That's the God we want to serve. Because everybody in this world has a chance to come to God. Okay, look a little further. He chose Israel, but he also the God who reigned over this world. Sometimes the thought of wise men and prophets turn to one of these great thoughts, and sometimes to the other. But of this, the psalmist was sure that he is God. I'm going to look right on over to the application quickly and see if we can get some of that done. We must avoid concluding that God does not care about us when our prayers are not immediately answered. That's a big problem for us. Thank you, Brother Holden. He just shut me down. So, hey, you know what? If you want a copy of the lesson, I'll give you a copy of it. Yeah. I can share it with you. At this time, see if we can get that. Brother Fair, you feel like dismissing this? Thanks for your patience.
Good morning, church. Good morning. Y'all please pray with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your man servants. The wonderful slip before us, and even those who are still in the audience, still on the way. We thank you for those who are coming and praising. We ask that we go through the rest of this service with our hearts clear and our minds ready to receive and understand the truth. In God's name, Jesus, his son. Amen.
Amen. Hold on,